The Trump administration says Harvard University violated the civil rights of Jewish and Israeli students. In a letter to Harvard, the Justice Department threatened to cut all federal funding if the school failed to take remedial action. This is the latest salvo in the White House's battle with the Ivy League university, which has already lost more than $2.6 billion in federal funding after rejecting administration demands to change campus governance, hiring policies, and admission practices. Joining me now here at the family table, White House correspondent for NOTUS. Remember, that's News of the U.S., Jasmine Wright. She was recently promoted to correspondent, so congratulations on that. And race and politics reporter for the Associated Press, Matt Brown. Matt, it's great to have you with us. Thanks for joining us.
Great to be here.
Give me your perspective on this latest back and forth between the administration and Harvard over underlying accusations of anti-Semitism, which Harvard said it has worked very hard to address and, if not solve, certainly move in a more positive direction.
Well, absolutely. As we all know, there has been a very substantive debate over the last couple of years over how universities and other elite institutions can properly address anti-Semitism in this country. And Harvard has said in many statements and in a report that they have themselves put out that they could have done better in handling many of the protests and campus climate that the university experienced over the last couple of years. There's also this separate question over debates over academic freedom and the Trump administration's entire relationship with the American university system at large.
And using threats or investigations and holding things over universities' heads to get them to change things. The president of University of Virginia resigned on Friday just over the threat of an investigation related to diversity, equity, inclusion. That goes to that point.
Exactly. And this broader debate that the Trump administration is having with the American academia at large comes in with this letter in the same context. So there are many things that they cited in this letter that many Jewish and Israeli students at Harvard and in the Harvard community have said what the campus climate was like for them and what concerns that they had, but that also the discourse here is within this broader context of, is the Trump administration acting in good faith? And if they're going to suspend funding for Harvard, is that going to be a conversation that Harvard can actually engage with the administration on, or is this just going to have to go to court?
And of course, Jasmine, one of the reasons there is a back and forth in this is Harvard is fighting back, unlike other institutions which tried to negotiate a settlement.
Yeah, I was talking to somebody close to Trump just today, and I asked them, is Harvard the example of what happens when you push back against Donald Trump as a university? And they said, yes, it is. Yes, they do want Harvard to do more, right? They want them to commit to merit-based acceptance policy, something that Harvard doesn't want to do. They want them to be more stringent on prosecuting against people who may be anti-Semitic, something that Harvard says that they're interested in doing. But they also want them to invest more in trade schools, something that Harvard isn't not interested in, but they don't want necessarily be forced to do it. Still, though, this is the administration, just as they're doing across the board on all different industries, saying you either play ball and behave, as Donald Trump has said multiple times, or this is what you get, the full might of the federal government against you, basically whittling you down until you are forced to make a deal. So yes, these anti-Semitic claims are very serious on Harvard's campus, but it is also a way to put more pressure on Harvard to make a deal with the president,
and to
something
send
that
a
he
signal
wanted
to
to
academia nationwide.
To don't try it.
Matt, you had some very interesting reporting that caught my eye and our eye about oversight, which is a congressional, constitutionally protected inquiry into what the executive branch is doing, and how it has led to arrests for Democrats trying to carry out what they say are legitimate oversight activities.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, just in the past couple of weeks, we've seen not just arrests, but prosecution of a sitting member of Congress for attempting to conduct oversight at a facility in her district. So what you've seen there with the situation with Representative LaMonica McIver, with Senator Alex Padilla, and I should also say many other Democratic lawmakers, mostly in states and cities across the country, is the Trump administration basically saying that, especially on immigration, this is not an issue that we are going to negotiate on, especially at ad hoc in their view, appearances at ICE facilities or appearances at federal buildings even.
And if you do anything that could be construed as bumping into or touching someone with immigration's customs and enforcement, that will be interpreted as abuse or some sort of assault, and prosecutorial charges will be raised.
Or if you simply walk into a press conference and announce yourself as a senator, but don't necessarily give a tone that the administration likes to agree with, that would immediately, apparently, put you in handcuffs in this situation. So those are the situations that we're seeing all across the country.
How are Democrats absorbing this particular moment?
Well, the first thing that a lot of them have done is speak with legal counsel, both in officially the House of Representatives and the Senate, but then also personal legal counsel to make sure that they can be protected from whatever charges the government or Trump and his allies could bring to them. The second thing that they've done is figure out what are back channels and other conversations that we can be having with other lawmakers across the country, the business community, activists and advocacy groups to both track what's going on inside of this administration, but then also use the bully pulpit to shed light on this, because the Trump administration is really in formalities not having a lot of front office channels with many of these Democrats. So they're having to figure out other ways to conduct oversight and other ways to critique and gain basic insights into what's going on inside the administration.
Jasmine, it's worth reminding ourselves that Congress passed, President Biden signed a ban on TikTok that was to go into effect the beginning of this year. Mm-hmm. It has been delayed and delayed and delayed. And over the weekend, President Trump made some possible news. I emphasize the word possible in regards to a sale of TikTok. Let's listen.
We have a buyer for TikTok, by the way. I think I'll need probably China approval. And I think President Xi will probably do it.
Who's buying?
I'll tell you in about 2 weeks.
A big technology company there.
Very, very wealthy people. It's a group of very wealthy people.
First of all, there's that time tick of President Trump's. Everything is 2 weeks from now. Anything that's pending, check with me in 2 weeks. Okay, whatever. 2 weeks. This sounds like something potentially promising, but it's all very amorphous and vague and full with probablys.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's kind of how the president rolls, right? He thinks he has a deal, and then he, gives a time frame, and then he may or may not hit a deal. Deadlines really mean nothing to him unless he says that they do, and even then they may not. Certainly, this has been an ongoing issue for the White House as they've tried to seek at least a buyer of a company or a coalition of buyers, talking to multiple tech companies, talking to multiple people in and out of the White House. Sometimes, of course, we know that these visits aren't on the visitor log. They're not being public, so we don't actually know exactly the full breadth of people that he's always meeting on these issues. But, we know that people have voiced interest in this deal that he's met with, sometimes related, sometimes not. I think a great question was actually posed on this inside the briefing today, the press briefing, when somebody says, Donald Trump says you have a buyer, but do you have a seller? The major question mark has been whether or not China is actually going to sell, if they're going to acquiesce to the full government, not just the White House, but certainly concerned Republicans and concerned Democrats' requests to sell this Bing to keep it operational in the U.S., and we really haven't gotten a clear answer from China about where they are. And so I think that Donald Trump can say that he is a buyer, and he could actually potentially have a buyer.
Right.
But this is ultimately going to be up to President Xi and whether or not he's going to grant the permission to sell. And then beyond that, how much of the stake of the company does China get to keep? And what of the formulations that they use, all the ways that TikTok gathers information, what will China still be able to keep their hands on?
And who owns the algorithm and the data?
Exactly. Those are the two words.
Jasmine Wright, Matt Brown, thank you so much. I appreciate it very much.